When she came in from the garage, I was already sitting in a chair right in the middle of the kitchen, facing the laundry room. She spotted me as soon as she walked into the doorway, and her expression immediately shifted to something between. "Nick," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "What's going on? Are you okay?" "Yeah, everything's fine," I replied, keeping my tone casual. "I just thought you might want to help me with something, a fitting." "A fitting?" Her eyebrows shot up in confusion. "What kind of fitting? What are you talking about?" I reached over to the small table I had pulled in from the living room. On it, I had laid out a few specific items I had carefully prepared for this moment. I picked one up and held it out proudly. "This," I said, presenting the small metal device like a trophy. "They say it has to be properly adjusted to fit right." Her confusion deepened into something bordering on alarm. "What is that? What are you doing, Nick? Is this some kind of joke?" she asked, her voice rising as she tried to piece it all together. "No joke," I said with a slight shake of my head, though I couldn't help a small smirk. "Well, maybe a little bit of a joke. But it's also very serious." I lifted the shiny chastity cage, the metal gleaming under the kitchen lights. "It's a chastity device, for men," I added, as if that explained everything. Her eyes grew wide, bulging almost cartoonishly. "Have you lost your mind?" she exclaimed, stepping back cautiously. "What are you even talking about?" "I've done some research," I said calmly. "You see, husbands like me, you know, ones who've been cucked, are supposed to wear these. It's kind of a rule. You wear the key on a chain around your neck, and after your partner finishes with you, you decide whether or not to let me out. For, you know, leftovers." She stared at me like I was speaking another language. "What?" she shouted. "Nick, are you seriously out of your mind? What are you even saying right now?" "I just wanted to make sure I understood how this works," I explained, keeping my tone even. "And that I'm ready to play my part. Here, look," I held up a delicate chain with a small key dangling from it. "You could wear this, it's stylish, right? But if you don't like it, we can pick another one. There are plenty of options out there." Her face turned bright red, a mix of anger and disbelief. "What is this garbage? What's this about a partner? And what the hell is that thing in your hand?" I sighed, disappointed but not surprised by her reaction. "The partner, well, that's the guy. The one who takes care of things with you. And I just clean up afterward. That's how it's supposed to go." Her jaw clenched as she stepped forward, her voice shaking with fury. "Nick, are you accusing me of something? Is this about Aaron Blake? Are you actually accusing me of having an affair?" "Accusing is a strong word," I said, shrugging. "No, I'm not accusing you of anything. That implies judgment. I'm just trying to make sure I know my role. That's all. Now, can you help me put this on?" I held out the device toward her. She took 2 quick steps, grabbed the cage from my hand, and hurled it toward the laundry room with surprising force. The clattering sound it made inside the dryer was deafening. "Stop this," she screamed, her voice breaking with frustration. "Well, that's a shame," I muttered, pretending to be hurt. "You probably bent it. If you didn't like it, you could have just said so. Now I'll have to straighten it out or exchange it for another." "To hell with that thing," she snapped. "When? How long have you known?" I tilted my head, pretending to calculate. "Let's see, today is March 15th. The first time was February 11th at 7:44 in the evening. It's now 5:40 p.m. Do you need it down to the minute?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Why didn't you say anything?" she managed to choke out. "And what should I have said?" I countered. "Something like, 'Ashley, you cheating fool. That's not really my style.'" Her eyes filled with tears. You think I'm some kind of monster, she whispered. I sighed heavily. Not a monster, Ashley. Just, a sociopath. Her gasp was audible, her wide blue eyes welling up with more tears. I loved you, I added. But now, knowing what I know, I just have to figure out what's next. Are you divorcing me? She asked, her voice cracking. Yes, I said flatly. But since we'll still be living together for a while, I thought maybe you'd throw me a bone here and there in between sessions with Aaron. Nick, this is over, she shouted. I won't see him again. I don't want a divorce, Ashley said, her voice trembling with desperation. Well, that's unexpected, I replied, raising an eyebrow. Usually, when a wife starts sleeping with other men, it's because she's gearing up for a divorce. Maybe that's not what you intended, but that's typically how these things go. Her face turned pale. I didn't want you to find out, she admitted. It was just a brief fling, Nick. It's over now, I swear. I'll spend the rest of my life proving to you that I can be the best wife you've ever dreamed of. That's an enticing offer, I said, unable to hide my sarcasm. But I'm afraid I'll have to pass. Nick, please, don't do this. She was begging now, her voice cracking with emotion. You know I love you. It didn't mean anything. It just happened, and I'm telling you it's over. Considering you never told me it started, I have a hard time believing it's truly over, I said coolly. How exactly are you planning to convince me? She stepped closer, pressing her body against mine. Her warmth was undeniable, and her desperation palpable. I promise, Nick, it's all behind me now. I'll never do it again. We both knew her promises were as flimsy as tissue paper. Ignoring my silence, she suddenly snapped. I don't want to hear about those damn cages anymore, she growled. Forget them. I told you it's over. Why can't you just believe me? Ashley, did you use protection with Aaron Blake? I asked, my tone sharp. Her face turned a deep shade of red. Stop calling him that, she snapped. And yes, of course, we used protection. Good, I said flatly. Because I was wondering if you were planning on us being intimate anytime soon. Anytime you want, baby, she purred, her tone shifting abruptly. Have I ever said no to you? Not that I recall, I admitted. But I think you should still get tested for STDs. No point in both of us risking our health. Her confidence wavered. If I had caught anything, wouldn't I already know by now? She asked hesitantly. Wait. Her voice trailed off as realization hit. You haven't touched me since I started seeing him, have you? That's right, I said evenly. I couldn't stomach the thought of, well, contamination. She recoiled at the bluntness of my words, her nose wrinkling in disgust. Fine. I'll get checked tomorrow, she muttered. But what happens now, Nick? Not much for a while, I replied. Divorces take time, as you know. A soft groan escaped her lips. I told you, I don't want a divorce, she pleaded. We don't need to go that far. I know you said that, I replied, keeping my voice steady. It was only a few minutes ago, actually. I remember, though I admit my focus slipped a bit when you tried to seduce me. Please, she whispered. I'll be faithful to you from now on. I swear, Nick. Yes, you've mentioned that before, I said, unimpressed. And I don't believe you. Her face twisted with frustration. I don't know what's wrong with me, she admitted. I wasn't planning to have an affair. Aaron and I were just around each other all the time at work, and he kept flirting. I gave in. I got stupid, okay? I'm sorry, Nick. I know it doesn't mean much, but I truly am. Funny, I thought you'd be more upset, I said. I've been furious for weeks. At first, I thought about killing you. I even got out an old gun and went to the range to practice. Then I decided maybe I'd kill him instead. Eventually, I came up with a plan to take care of both of you. But Macy talked me out of it. Her eyes widened in horror. Macy knows? You told our daughter? How could you do that? Do you hate me that much? No, I didn't tell her, I said calmly. She figured it out on her own. Ashley looked like she'd been punched in the stomach. How, when did she know? Oh my God, that's why she hasn't called me. She's always too busy to talk when I try to reach out. I can't believe this. I shrugged. Maybe she's just following one of God's cardinal rules: don't sleep with people who aren't your spouse. Tears streamed down her face as she stared at me, the weight of her actions finally settling in. Nick, she said quietly, what am I supposed to do now? Honestly, I have no idea, I said, crossing my arms. Maybe there's a book out there titled, How to Explain to Your Daughter Why You're a Cheater. Or perhaps a website. Her dull eyes lifted to meet mine. You don't have to keep hurting me, she said softly. If it makes you feel better, I think you have the right. Do you enjoy it now? Yes, I admitted with no hesitation. A little, actually. But I wasn't violent before. You made me this way. I'm sorry, she whispered. Can you help me fix this? I don't know, I said bluntly. What exactly did you think was going to happen when I found out? I didn't think you would, she admitted, shaking her head. I didn't think at all. I just did it. Well, now you know, I said, my tone flat. So what's your grand idea for fixing this? She paused for a moment, then asked hesitantly, what do you think about open marriages? I think they're just divorces waiting to happen, I replied coldly. But I've read about them, she countered. People say it works for them on TV and in magazines. Sure, I said dryly. And last week, while I was at the grocery store, I saw a magazine about a woman claiming to be Bigfoot's love slave. That doesn't mean it's a good idea. Ashley opened her mouth to speak but then shut it again, looking more like a pufferfish than her usual self. I stared at her for a long moment. No self-respecting man, or woman, would tolerate something like this. Open marriages are just a way to dress up cheating. Nothing more. How would you feel about that? Ashley asked, her voice quivering. Like you're about to cut my balls off, I said dryly. Almost exactly how I feel right now. That's not what I meant, she snapped. What can I do, Nick? Stop saying all these things. Her voice rose to a scream. I told you it's over. I'm not going to see anyone else. Yeah, I remember, I replied, my tone flat. Do you think I have Alzheimer's, Ashley? She just stared at me, unsure how to respond. You said you didn't believe me, she murmured, her voice soft now. By the way, I continued, ignoring her attempt to soften things, would you prefer your divorce papers served here or at work? I don't want a divorce, she said, her hands trembling now. I'm not giving you a divorce, Nick. I'm pretty sure it's not up to you, I said, keeping my tone calm but firm. I'm filing. You've got to wait, I think, 60 days. If you don't contest it, the judge will grant the divorce. Then I'll contest it, she shot back defiantly. Why? I asked, genuinely curious. You clearly don't want to be married, or at least not to me. Why argue for something you've already walked away from? I do want to be married. To you, she insisted, her voice cracking. What about the lover? I asked, tilting my head slightly. That seems counterproductive to staying married to me. I'll do anything, Nick, she said, her desperation palpable. If you want, I'll wear a cage. She paused, as if testing the waters. But only until the divorce is finalized. I left the room briefly and returned with the chastity cage. Holding it up, I said, you know, I don't think I'll actually wear this. It looks a little bent, and I'm pretty sure it'd be uncomfortable. I held it out for her to inspect. Ashley snatched it from my hand and tossed it into the laundry room. This time, instead of hitting the dryer, it landed perfectly in the laundry basket. "Leave that disgusting thing alone," she yelled. "You're being disgusting." "No, I'm just following the rules for husbands in situations like this," I explained. "I've done my research. This is standard for a cuckold." "You're not a cuckold, or whatever you're trying to call it," she stammered, alarm flashing across her face. "Technically, no," I admitted with a smirk. "I guess I'm just a, let's say, reluctantly obliging cuckold. And I don't plan on raising any bull's babies, unless Macy isn't mine, of course." Her face turned ghostly pale. Don't even joke about that," she whispered. "Of course Macy is yours." I tilted my head, pretending to think. "Do you think I should get a DNA test?" She looked at me like I'd just landed from another planet. "There's no need for that," she said quickly. "Macy is your child. I've never been unfaithful to you before Aaron Blake." Her voice cracked as she said his name. "You mean before Big Johnson," I corrected, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "Stop calling him that," she snapped. "I've told you already, he wasn't that big. He's nothing, Nick. Believe me, you're more than enough for any woman." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? Did you ask around to confirm?" Her face flushed crimson. "Girls talk about these things," she mumbled, avoiding my eyes. "Is that so?" I said, leaning back in my chair. "How big is Sam's, then?" "He always bragged about being well endowed." "I have no idea," she said, clearly flustered. "Guys who brag are usually compensating for something." "Interesting," I replied. "Thanks, Ashley. You learn something new every day. Are we done talking about divorces and cages and, whatever else this is?" she asked, her voice tense. "I guess," I said with a shrug. "But the divorce issue will come up again. For starters, you still haven't told me where you'd like the papers served." "I assume there'll be a hearing or something." "We're not getting divorced," she said firmly. With that, she turned and headed upstairs. Moments later, I heard the shower running. I wandered back into the laundry room and retrieved the cage. Despite the flimsy wire, it was well made, so I bent it back into shape as best I could. I placed it back in its box and set it carefully on the mantel next to our wedding photo. The contrast was striking. Later, I decided to treat myself to dinner at Angus Grill. Midway through a delicious steak, my phone buzzed. It was Ashley. "Where are you?" she asked, her voice frantic. "I'm having dinner," I replied. "This tenderloin is amazing. Usually, they're tough, but this one's perfect. I've always liked a good steak, you know." I heard her breathing heavily on the other end of the line. "Why didn't you ask me if I wanted to go?" "I thought you might want to call Aaron Blake and officially end things," I said, my tone light. "I didn't want to disturb you in case it wasn't over and you needed time to set up another date." "I was going to tell him tomorrow," she snapped. "When are you coming home?" "Tonight," I said casually. "But Bud's got a darts tournament. I figured I'd stop by, have a couple of beers, and maybe be home by 9. Unless Alicia's there, of course. If she is, I might hang out to see what she's up to." She hissed through the phone. "Why would you do that?" "You know I've always had a thing for her," I said coolly. "While we were married, I never acted on it. But hey, now that I know how things work." "You're still married to me," she growled. "If you're not home by 9, I swear I'll claw that bitch's eyes out." I didn't doubt her for a second. Ashley had never liked Alicia, even before this mess started. When I got home, Ashley was in the kitchen, aggressively banging pots and pans as if trying to take out her frustration on them. Without saying a word, I headed upstairs, took a long shower, and went straight to bed. I had to be up at 5:30 for work, so I wasn't planning on engaging in whatever storm she was brewing downstairs. A little while later, she crawled into bed next to me, completely naked. She slid her hand down my body, clearly looking for something more, but I stopped her. "Hold on," I said, my voice firm. "Not to ruin the mood, but shouldn't you have taken that test first?" She sighed loudly, clearly exasperated. "Nick, you're talking nonsense. I don't have an STD, Aaron Blake is married, he wouldn't risk bringing anything home to his wife. Besides, I already told you, I always made him use protection. I swear. Is that oath anything like the one where you promised to forsake all others?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Just wondering." She hesitated for a moment before saying, "How am I supposed to prove I'm serious if you won't even make love to me?" I didn't answer, and the next day, I went about my business with a noticeable smile on my face. Some of the guys at work teased me about it, but I didn't care. When I got home, Ashley was still in the kitchen, this time with a much lighter mood. "I'm making pork chops," she called out. "Stuffed, just the way you like them." "Sounds great," I replied. I went upstairs, changed into something more comfortable, and came back down to watch basketball on ESPN. Not long after, Ashley brought me a beer and some chips. "Wow, what a life," I thought sarcastically. Dinner was fantastic, and afterward, Ashley told me she had gone to get tested. She said the results would be back in 3 days, which, conveniently, was Friday. She seemed genuinely excited about the results, and I didn't want to burst her bubble. "You know," I said casually, "if you ever decide to sleep with Aaron Blake again, you'll need to take another test." "I'm not going to sleep with him, or anyone else," she shouted, clearly frustrated. "How many times do I have to tell you, Nick? From now on, I'll be as faithful as an atomic clock." "Good to know," I said, my tone indifferent. "I mean it," she added quickly. "I'm yours and yours alone, Nick. For the rest of my life." It all sounded so familiar, but I just nodded. Friday rolled around, and Ashley met me at the door with the test results in hand. "See," she exclaimed, waving the paper in front of my face. "I told you so. We were just wasting time worrying." She grabbed my hand, leading me toward the stairs. Just as we were halfway there, the doorbell rang. Ashley opened the door to reveal a tall, imposing man in a sharp suit with a snake tattoo curling up his neck. "Are you Ashley Miller?" he asked. "Yes," she said cautiously. "What's this about?" He handed her a large envelope. "You've been served, ma'am. Sorry about this." With that, he turned and walked away. I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. "I always thought process servers were young women chewing gum," I said lightly. "This is definitely a bad omen." Ashley turned to me, her face pale. "Nick, what is it?" "I'm almost certain it's your divorce papers," I replied. She groaned, sinking to the floor of the foyer. It was undignified, to say the least. I tried to help her up, but she yanked her hand away. "Why?" she sobbed. "I told you I don't want a divorce." "I'm sorry, Nick. Please don't divorce me." I sighed, picking her up and carrying her to the couch. "I told you this would happen," I said. "Did you think I was kidding?" "No," she cried. "I just thought you'd change your mind. Please, just give me a chance to prove myself. I'll show you what a wonderful wife I can be." "You want to start proving it now?" I asked. She nodded through her tears. I held out my hand, and she took it. Upstairs, she proved herself 3 times that night, twice on Saturday, and twice more on Sunday. She even called Aaron Blake in front of me, making me listen as she told him to stay away and never contact her again. He didn't take it well, hurling insults that mirrored the ones Macy and I had used when talking about him. The divorce proceedings moved forward. The judge scheduled counseling sessions, 6 in total, though the counselor could reduce the number. Ashley got to choose the counselor, and she picked a man I absolutely despised, a fat, balding toad of a man who hadn't seen a marriage in decades. He had all sorts of progressive theories he tested on us, using us as his guinea pigs. I played along, making all the right noises and participating in his ridiculous exercises. At the final session, he asked if I wanted him to tell the judge we were calling off the divorce. "I'll handle it myself," I said. As I stood to leave, he extended his hand. I shook it lightly, but then leaned in close. "Listen, you fat bastard," I growled. "Take all your advice and shove it up your ass." I walked out, leaving both Ashley and the counselor standing there in stunned silence. Ashley followed me to the car. "Why did you do that, Nick?" she asked. "I thought we were making progress." "I thought so too," I replied, "until you decided to become Aaron Blake's personal needlewoman." She froze, stunned. "You're really going through with this, aren't you?" "Yes," I said simply. "I told you from the start." "Maybe you should get your hearing checked, Ashley." "Are you moving out or making me move out?" she asked. "No," I said. "I like my house. If you want to leave, go ahead. But if one of us moves out, we'll either sell the house and split the money, or whoever stays will have to buy the other out." "So, we'll get divorced but still live together?" she asked. "Why not?" I said. "You're an incredible lover, Ashley. As long as you keep it that way, I won't kick you out. But if you sleep with anyone else, all bets are off." "Are you planning to sleep with other women?" she asked. "Honestly, if you keep this up, I won't have the energy," I said with a smirk. She thought for a moment, then smiled. "In a year, we'll be married again." I hoped she didn't bet money on that. The odds were not in her favor.
What do you think about this story? Write in comments. If you don't follow our channel Cheating Room, you will probably never hear from us again. If you are subscribed, congratulations, you will not miss any exciting story. Thank you for listening to this shocking story with us. See you again.
Bye bye.